If you clicked on this video, you might know McKinsey Company, the world's most prestigious and most secretive management consulting firm. It's a highly selective company. Getting an offer to McKinsey is tougher than getting accepted to Harvard. As a next McKinsey management consultant, I'd like to share with you 7 lessons that I learned at the firm that now help me in my career and personal life. These lessons help to build consultants' incredible careers once they leave McKinsey. By the way, did you know that 70 ex-consultants became Fortune 500 CEOs? So now you can learn these lessons too. If you're new here, hi, I'm Katia, and on this channel we are figuring out adult life. I share a lot about careers, personal finance, professional development, and also my immigration experience. I live in France, by the way, although today I am in London. Okay, back to my consulting experience. I will start by briefly sharing my background to set the stage, and then I'll share my learnings. Well, the way to an offer was not a ride in a park. Despite having 2 degrees from prestigious European business schools and multiple years of working experience in multinational corporations, I got rejected 2 times before I finally got that offer. And on my 3rd attempt, I finally got an offer for an associate or consultant position, and I came to the firm as an experienced hire with 5 years of industry experience. When I came to McKinsey, I was specializing in marketing and sales and also strategy, and I worked with clients in retail industry and consumer goods. And I can divide my life into 2 parts, before and after McKinsey. Getting an offer from the firm was a turning point, both in my career and in my personal life. I met my future husband at the firm. We both moved from Russia to France back in 2019. Thanks to McKinsey, we did a transfer from Moscow to Paris office. And I got my current job, a global strategy manager in a large CPG firm, thanks to my McKinsey experience. And with this smooth and slightly unexpected transition to a quieter place, let me start my story. And I ranked all the lessons that I learned by degree of importance and degree of impact to my career and personal life. So, lesson number 7 is called "Sometimes wrong, never in doubt." We say that about Harvard professors sometimes. When you start working as a consultant, the first thing that you need to learn is executive communication and presence. In this role, you are working with high-ranking people on an everyday basis. And it's simply impossible to impress them by the degree of your expertise or your deep, long experience in the industry, because you are simply more junior. And normally in consulting, you are about, I would say, 23, 25, 27. So that's the average age of a typical consultant. Yet you are hired to solve problems the company client cannot solve on its own. How does that work? As a consultant, you are bringing something else. Your problem-solving skills, your fresh perspective, your ability to structure the problem and gather the critical information fast and test the hypothesis. So all these are the critical skills for a consultant. And you can't know everything. And you never will. And that is perfectly fine. It's okay. So if you are in a similar situation, stay confident and focus on 2 things. First, executive communication, which is clear and concise articulation of your own thoughts and ideas, focusing on whatever is the most important to solve the problem. And second, executive presence, which is your comfort around senior leaders and your ability to project confidence. What I learned during my years at McKinsey is that how you speak, the way you speak, is oftentimes more important than what you are saying. And now the actionable advice. Think about the last time you doubted a certain decision at work. How long did you hesitate, look for some data and additional advice from outside? How long did it postpone the decision, and was it worth it? A consultant would not hesitate. A consultant would have a hypothesis from day one. It is called day one hypothesis, based on the best data that they have at the moment. And they would test it later, and maybe with the new data, with new insights coming, they would adjust it and maybe change it completely, but they would have an opinion from day one. And yes, maybe they were wrong, but never in doubt. I was ready to tell you about lesson number 6, but my friend, my furry baby, came to say hi. Lesson number 6 is called Common Sense is King. Believe it or not, but the common sense is not that common in the big organizations, surprisingly. And you can't even imagine how powerful it could be to come into the room with a fresh perspective and ask several quite simple questions. What problem are we trying to solve? Are we clear on the end goal? What we are trying to achieve? Are our actions actually helping us to achieve that goal? Those who ask these questions are great at taking a step back and looking at the overall big picture instead of getting lost in the weeds. And even if it sounds very simple, this muscle is the most critical one to train in order to climb up the career ladder, and it becomes even more critical in executive positions. And asking these type of questions is literally what they teach you during the first weeks at McKinsey, during this first onboarding training, because it's not that simple. It is simple and not simple at the same time. So keep it in mind when you are entering the room with a bunch of people trying to solve a problem next time. Next time you are stuck with endless back and forth with your colleagues, going in circles, trying to find a solution to a problem multiple times, pause for a second and try to ask your team these 3 questions, and I'm sure you will be surprised how far it can take you. Lesson number 5. 20% of the actions will bring you 80% of the results. That one is easy, but very important, and it's the consulting version of the famous Pareto principle. In consulting, we would also say, do not boil the ocean. To solve any problem, there are always 20% of the key actions which will bring you the 80% of your results. The trick, though, would be to identify those 20% and focus specifically on these ones and not get distracted. Consulting engagements can be as short as 2 to 3 weeks, and in this short period of time, your client is expecting very tangible results already. If you don't prioritize ruthlessly, you will spread yourself thin and will get nowhere by the deadline. Think about whatever goal you have at work at the moment. Are you sure that you are focusing on the most important actions which will bring you to that goal? Have you identified those 20%? Have you actually thought about it? Have you prioritized your actions? Or you're already spread thin in thousands of to-dos? Being completely honest, I still tend to do that sometimes, because when you have a long to-do list, you have this feeling that you are busy, and busy does not necessarily mean productive, but we have this false impression, false bias. So each time I have an important task at work, I would pause for a second, or first thing during my morning, I will ask myself this question: is this 20% or not? And surprisingly, at least half of the times, I would find that no, I'm not doing something which is crucially important first. I'm focusing on something else. So yeah, that's the lifelong learning process. Before I go to the next lesson, I have a small ask for you. If you find this video insightful so far, please hit the like button so that more people can find my content and boost their careers. And maybe even consider subscribing. So let's move to the lesson number 4. You can't be great at everything, but you need to excel in 1 or 2 things. Don't get obsessed about your weaknesses. Instead, identify 1 or 2 your natural strengths or talents and focus specifically on them in order to develop them further. In consulting, we call those talents spikes, something you will be noted for. This can range from client communications, relationships building, to advanced analytics. At McKinsey, my professional development plan was built around my strengths. And why is that? Because it's much more effective and rewarding to develop something that you're already good at even further. The best way to identify your strengths is by collecting feedback from the people you work with. It could be your clients, it could be your peers, it could be your line manager, anyone you work with, and sometimes even your friends. Yeah, honestly, at work we tend to show our certain sides of our personalities more than others, but our friends know us in a different setting. Many of them know us for years and years, so they can bring you a very interesting perspective. So ask friends as well. Think about yourself. What would your peers and managers say about your strengths? What are you great at? Are you using it to the fullest? And what was the last time you consciously thought about how you can improve it further? Lesson number 3. Manage your work-life balance as you manage a critical project. You can accomplish much more than you think in a short term. But if you keep pushing yourself to the edge of your limits, day by day, week by week, it becomes unsustainable in the long run and can lead to a burnout and even to health problems. Consulting work is very demanding. You work in sprints, project by project. One project, one sprint. On top of everything, consulting companies has an up or out policy, meaning that if you are not growing at work, you are getting fired. Approximately each 6 months, there is a committee which reviews the performance of a consultant and decides whether this consultant stays and grows further, ultimately to the partner role, or he or she leaves the company. And all this makes a consulting job extremely stressful. And in my opinion, this is the worst downside of a consulting career. I personally learned the hard way that if you are not managing actively your work-life balance, your sleep, nutrition, your physical activity, your social connections, eventually it will mess you up. Even though I was quite young when I joined consulting, I managed to almost ruin my health at a certain point. So if you want to stay in the game in the long run and to be effective at work, you ultimately need to learn how to build boundaries and protect your work-life balance. Think about yourself now. How does your life look like and your work life look like? Are you getting at least 8 hours of sleep? Are you doing your sports and exercises at least 2-3 times per week? Are you having time with your friends, with your family? If not, take a pause and reconsider the way you work and live, because no work is worth no life. Moving to a second lesson, lesson number 2, earning more money does not necessarily mean that you are better off financially. Salaries in management consulting are quite high and you also get a lot of perks. You get your taxes covered, your meals reimbursed, then you can collect your points in hotels and airlines. So yeah, you are doing pretty well. When I joined McKinsey from the industry, my salary went up 3 times overnight. And as I was not careful enough, my expenses went up even further. I would say 5 times. So I ended up in a huge credit card debt. I did a separate video on this topic and openly shared how I blew away my 140k salary because of the lifestyle creep and because of the high stress levels. And also, what do I do differently today in order not to repeat that cycle? So I invite you to watch it. So lesson number 1, the most important lesson that I learned is that people matter more than content. As a McKinsey consultant, you have all sorts of projects available to you. Starting from a launch of a new digital product in a swanky bank HQ to a oil and gas and productivity project somewhere in the oil ring in the middle of the sea, to a non-profit initiative in the sub-Saharan Africa. You choose. And some of these projects can look very tempting and very sexy. The most critical lesson that I learned is that due diligence on the people with whom you will be working with is an absolute must. What does that mean exactly? First, just talk to them. Ask them about what they value in the team members, and how much time and energy they will be willing to dedicate to the team, and what they believe is the most important to deliver on a project. Second, talk to the people with whom these guys have worked previously, this leadership team, for example. What feedback they can give you? Would they recommend you working with this team? It's the people which make your work worth it much more than the substance of the work itself, much more than the content. Think about your team. Are you enjoying working with them? If your boss called you to unblock a sewer blockage tomorrow, would you follow them? And if you wouldn't, are you sure you are in the right place? So guys, while working at McKinsey was an important chapter of my life and it taught me a lot of things, I personally believe that this work is not for everyone. There are a lot of downsides in the consulting career, and if you're interested, please let me know in the comments below and I will film a separate video about disadvantages, about the cons of working for big 3 consulting companies. Thank you for watching this video until the very end. If you liked it, please hit the like button and maybe consider subscribing to learn more content from me about building stellar careers.